The 3-Minute Game by Betty Martin that integrates the wheel of consent is the best way, the most profound way, no matter how many times I've played it, I always learn something, to deepen intimacy with your partner. Through touch and non-touch. It can be sexual and non-sexual. So this is good for dating, to be able to lead whoever you're dating with through this game, as well as to deepen your relationship with your partner, because this integrates everything, okay? Negotiation, which means owning what I want, asking for what I want, including my fears, desires, and boundaries in receiving my partner's request, aiming for a win-win of like, what is actually a heck yes? Like a full body, instead of just a 7 out of 10, yeah, I'd be into that, or a 9 out of 10. How can we both aim for having an amazing experience? And what this opens up is dimensions, aspects, flavors of intimacy that most of us have never really experienced before, either at all, and certainly not as intentionally as this, because this requires us to intimacy, that felt sense of closeness, of I'm feeling you, feel me. I'm feeling me, feel you. And I like to say it's a visceral experience of closeness that we get to share when nothing's in the way. And so we have to remove consciously what's in the way, our conclusions, our assumptions, our expectations, to actually meet in the present moment. To integrate our whole selves, our whole being, our gut, our power center, our heart, our mind into the relationship. So I'm going to review some key concepts. Now, the big thing as we do this for you to get is this has to be put into practice. Do this 50 times. Try this game 50 times. And there's a lot of nuance to this. So you need to practice and have multiple different contrasting experiences to start to turn concept into an embodied experience. So learn not through the information that I'm about to tell you, but through the experience itself. It's going to bring up more questions, and then you can bounce those off of me or someone else who's in this practice as well. So traditionally, when we think about giving and receiving, so Betty Martin's book is The Art of Receiving and Giving. So you can check that out in the book form, podcast, on YouTube. Highly recommend that. But even more so, what's important is that you practice this stuff, okay? So when we think about receiving and giving, we normally think of the traditional, if my hands are on someone's shoulder and I'm doing this motion, normally we're going to think I'm the one that's giving and that other person is receiving, right? And we call that a massage. I am giving a massage, I'm giving touch, and they are receiving that touch. But Betty Martin opens up a whole other realm or dimension of pleasure through understanding that that same touch with a different intention, specifically who it's for, changes the directionality of the pleasure and the experience of the dynamic itself. So I'm going to lay this all out for you, okay? So who it's for is a very important question. Am I touching your shoulders for your pleasure or for my pleasure? And when we answer that question, that puts us into one of 4 roles within the wheel of consent. So traditionally, if I'm touching your shoulders and it's for your pleasure, then I am serving you and you are accepting this gift. So you can make a request and say, would you rub my shoulders for my pleasure? That's what you could say. If I say yes, we're in consent to do the thing that we agreed upon. And I serve you, which means I offer you a gift. So we're exchanging a gift, right, in giving and receiving. And you are accepting the gift you asked for. Similarly, I can offer you, would you like me to touch your body in any way for your pleasure? And then you can make the request, and I could offer that. So that's serve, accept. Those are 2 quadrants, okay? Now, you could ask me, how would you like to touch my body for your pleasure? Now, the question of who it's for is for me. So I could say, I would like to rub your shoulders. Now in that, I could easily fall into the old dynamic and the pattern or the habit of giving for your pleasure. So it's a completely different dynamic. I'm just using this as an example of the shoulders to tease this out. But I can touch your shoulders to take pleasure in you, to use your body for my pleasure. And there are different adjectives that people might be averse to, like the word use, so then don't use that word if you don't feel like that feels healthy and turns you on, right? But use, we can change our relationship to different words, like use, if it's in consent, right? So these two other quadrants that open up to us when we ask the question who it's for, and it's for the person doing the touch, is take and allow. So now you are allowing me access to your body, right? For my pleasure. When we are not in consent in this dynamic, that's called abuse, which is why we always want to be explicit about what we're agreeing to. So consent is we both know what we're opting into to the best of our ability, right? And so that's what makes it feel good or be pleasurable, is you are giving me access to your body and I am taking pleasure in your body for me. Now these are the edgier quadrants, right? But now traditionally, when we think about how we give, usually we're doing something, right? Like in that other two quadrants, when I'm serving you and I'm doing and I'm kneading your shoulders, that means I'm literally taking an action to give to you, right? But in the take allow quadrants, when I'm allowing access, I'm giving without needing to do anything. Now the implications of this are incredible, okay? Because think about how we get stuck in black and white, all or nothing thinking all the time. But we'll talk about sex and pleasure specifically, which is we either have sex or we don't have sex. We engage in touch or we don't engage in touch. But there's this entire realm and world in between there where it goes, my perception of intimacy, sex, or giving will limit me. So now because I don't know how to negotiate, own my desires, fears, and limits, now I cut off the possibility of all connection, right? I'm touched out. And I think you want something from me, so I just cut off all connection entirely, right? So the main question that separates these dynamics, and I want you to start to practice this, is who is it for? And we can make requests and offers of each other. Would you like me to do this to you for your pleasure? Would you be willing to do this for me, for my pleasure? Right? So there are 4 questions, or you can ask this in many different ways, that separate the take, allow, serve, and accept. So we want to experience all 4 quadrants. The recommended time is 3 to 5 minutes each. Make sure you do the same amount of time for each. Make sure you debrief after each. And make sure you stay within the time limit. If this leads to other things, great. Finish the entire game first, and then do your other things. But view this game as that. It's a game, it's practice to see what this is like, to see if we can stay in the dynamic, because you'll notice all of the patterns and habits of what we've practiced already and been conditioned in will start to creep in. So I'm supposed to be taking pleasure in touching your body in some way, shape, or form. And suddenly I fall into pleasing you. Now I'm not in take anymore. So this muddiness, this murkiness, changes the polarity. And polarity is what creates that delicious, nourishing attraction, actually. And so when we learn how to stay in roles, just like in dancing, following and leading, the dance goes a lot differently than if we were to both not be clear about what our roles are for specified periods of time. And that's just the beginning.